gonna range for 2 days, the whole weekend, and it takes 2 days to make panettone. So facciamo un panettone oggi. So for the starter, I have 300 grams of water, half a teaspoon of yeast in here, and we have 330 grams of flour. We're gonna mix that, and we're gonna let it rest covered. There's obviously no need for the mixer for that because such a small amount of dough, it's very soft, but it's just to get there a little faster. See, it's very sticky. We're gonna let it rest, cover it with plastic wrap or a plate on top. And when it'll be nice and airy, we'll make the first dough. So this is what the starter looks like when it's ready. Bubbly. And I had to punch it down a bit because it was ready before me. Okay, so here we have 250 grams of starter. My intention was to make double recipe. I decided not to do the double recipe because my oven is too small and I don't have time for that. We'll do just a small recipe. The rest of the starter, you can keep it to make breads, anything. You can keep it for a few days in the fridge. All right, so we add to that 210 grams of lukewarm water. And if you see, there's no yeast because it is only the yeast in the starter that's going to make the dough rise. So we'll have to leave it overnight. It won't go that fast. And then we're gonna have 100 grams of sugar. And mix a little bit here. And we have the eggs. So we have 125 grams of egg yolks. Only the yolks. It's about seven eggs. So a quick mix by hand. Okay. Now I'm going to put the flour. It's 560 grams of bread flour. And I'm going to finish that with a mixer. Now we can add the butter. It's what, 170 grams of butter, and it should be like room temperature, soft enough. Of course, I forgot to take it out of the fridge this morning, so I had to just soften it on the stove top. Now on the slow speed, incorporate it. That's the buttery dough. When the dough comes up the hook, just push it down and it'll get mixed again. You might have to do this a few times. All right, and here it is. It's a very, very soft, beautiful dough. I will let it rise overnight. Let's go for round 2. It's morning now. So I left it to rise overnight, but not in a warm room. It has to be under 70 degrees, otherwise it would rise too fast. And you would have to get up at 4 in the morning to make it. I'm gonna put it back in the mixer, add all the ingredients, and then we'll go from there. Let's add 170 grams of water, slightly warm, you don't want it cold. Let's put 150 grams of sugar. I'm going to mix it lightly by hand because with the mix it's gonna splash everywhere. I'm going to add 9 yolks, it's about 170 grams. Let's put this in the mixer for a very short time before it starts splashing. Out of the bowl, we're going to add 440 grams of bread flour with 8 grams of salt. I'm not gonna add it all at once, just a little bit first, otherwise it's going to make a mess because there's too much liquid. Just slowly. Oops. This mixer is a little too small. We're gonna have to finish it by hand, maybe. Okay, stop it for a little while. Clean the sides that didn't get mixed in. I'm gonna go back because we have to add the soft butter. Now it's good enough to add the butter. So again, the butter has to be soft enough, not melted. I'm going to mix a little bit first because it's a little too much for the bowl now, so I don't want to add all of the butter at once. The reason why we add the butter after we mix the dough is because the butter, any fat, acts as a shortener. It shortens the strands of gluten. It just prevents them from developing. So if you want something that needs to rise and you use bread flour for that, put the butter at the end. This way they have the chance to develop by mixing it. All right, so now we're going to finish it by hand and feel if it's too sticky, add a little flour. I always finish things by hand, and it is very sticky. It is a very sticky dough, so we're going to have to add a lot of flour. Sometimes the dough depends also on the weather and the conditions in the house, if it's moist or dry, but this is clearly in need of more flour. So we'll knead it until it becomes silky, not sticky, and you can feel it. So it's going to take a lot more flour. And then we're gonna let it rest for about a half hour, and we will add the raisins and the candied orange peels. I've been adding enough flour so that I can actually touch it without getting any on my hands. So it is nice now, it's nice and smooth. And I would like to mention that what works best when I make bread or things that need to rise, well, I use King Arthur. It works much better than any other flour I tried. Gold medal is okay for cakes, I guess, but as far as breads, this one works much better. All right, so now we're gonna let it rest for about a half hour or an hour, and then we'll spread it and add the raisins and the orange. It's been about an hour. The dough's ready. Stretch a bit. Nice. Okay, we need to stretch it a little bit flat so that we can add the raisins and the orange peel. We have 420 grams of raisins, 210 grams of orange peel, and there are, even though I drained them, there's still a little moisture, so I'm just gonna add a little flour just so that it absorbs some of the moisture and doesn't make the dough too sticky. I don't want to see anything dripping from it. All right, that should do. So we're gonna take about a half. Spread again. It's going to be a little moist, so add flour if you have to. Okay, and we can add the rest. Now that everything's perfectly blended, mixed, we are going to let them rise for the last time in the molds. Now the regular molds would be very narrow and high, like a bag, but I don't have any. So I will use whatever I found. I couldn't find what I was looking for, so I took for like those little molds. It would be for like an individual fruit cake. The thing is, should be higher, but we'll work with what we have. The taste will be the same. And for what's left, I will use this one. It'll be much better because it's higher. And this is what we're looking for. Some people can use coffee cans lined with parchment paper. I don't have any coffee cans, so we'll work with what we have. I measured those little pieces of dough, just 200 grams. And I think it'll be enough for that little mold. Just want to make it like a big log. See if it fits. All right, that'll work. Ready for the final rise. Finally. All right, it's the final countdown now. I don't know if I forgot to mention that I soaked the raisins yesterday night. I put them in water, rinse them a few times until the water gets out clear, and soak them overnight in the fridge and drain them in the morning. It has more than doubled, and it's about 4 o'clock. I think I started at 8 o'clock this morning. And those are ready to bake at 400 degrees. I made those a little small. I could have made them a little bigger, but it's been so long since I've made it, so I can't even remember how big they're gonna get. Okay, it's about 4:30, and they're done. When they start to get a little brown on top, I lowered the heat to 380. This way they don't burn because they're so small. This one, I have a small oven. It's a long story, so I couldn't really switch racks because the mold was a little too high and touching on top. So the top is a little brown. I will cut it later on when it cools down to show you how it is inside. Now those look, some look bigger than others. That's only because I went by weight. And when they had more raisins inside, more raisins and oranges, they weigh more, but they have less dough compared to the amount of raisins inside.